Because one of the things sometimes that we have to unlearn with people is their viewpoint on debt.
Yeah.
And you say, yeah, I know debt's bad. No, most of the time we have to unlearn them that they're so enamored with debt that they forget at their own peril to invest. Right. And so I've run into people and they say, well, I've got an extra, they're going along in their life and they say, I've just got a raise and I got an extra $300 a month. So I'm going to pay off my debt. Well, that sounds great. And many times they hear that comes from a good place. People, you should get out of debt. We mean that. But if you don't understand that paying that debt off is foregoing putting something to work for you, you'll get enamored and back into that, and you're still building that same habit, and you're not investing. So if you took that $300 and you said, I'll put an extra $100 on debt, but I'll take $200 and put it in an investment that will begin to grow, the impact of that is significant. If you go 10 years down the road and, okay, I finally got all my debt paid off, but I haven't invested, that's a very different place for the person that says, I put 100 towards that and 200. That's very different. They have now something that can compound. So let's talk a little bit about maybe leveraging debt, and because we're not talking, or we're not advocates for credit card debt and consumer debt and things that leave you backwards. But what happens is people have a sense of guilt many times. They feel bad. Well, I've messed up and now I've got to bear this burden and I got to pay off that debt. And they get so fixated and enamored on that any little extra money they have, they may put on their debt, or they just continue on. And they really should, many times, if they're already servicing and paying that debt, get something working so that they can invest. Let's
well, I think it would get down to basically what is considered debt.
Yes.
Now, all of us have money that we owe. You owe your utility bill at the end of every month. You owe your house payment or your rent. And even if whatever it is, there are commitments and obligations that we've made. And if you don't pay your utility bill, that becomes a debt. But if you pay it as it comes up. So owing money is not the same as debt. Debt is money that I cannot pay. I have overextended my income. I'm beyond my income. And I could, if I lost my income, I could not pay it. Now, that's why you have, as we know, we start off investing in enough money that there's an emergency fund. You try to have 3 to 6 months of liquid money. It could be in mutual funds or stock market, but it's available. And then, as your illustration was perfect, if somebody has $300 increase and they're already have a plan to manage their paying off what they owe, then that extra $200 or $300 a month is growing. You know, there's the old thing, don't invest in depreciating assets. That's why buying a fancy car is not an asset that will appreciate. It will depreciate. Therefore, as it's depreciating, you can end up with debt. It's worth less than what you owe. And now that is the difference between what it's worth and what you owe. That's called being upside down. And so now you are in debt. That is debt. Whereas if you buy an asset that appreciates, then what you owe for that, if it's appreciating, then you can pay it off. Then you have the ability, if need be, to dissolve that obligation. It doesn't mean it's a debt unless it becomes a debt. So I think what you and I respond to is, and this is delicate. It's very delicate. But when people put all of their money into paying off whatever it is that they owe, let's just say a house, for example, and people, they pay the house down, then they've got an asset that they have to have, but they probably could have had a bigger asset if they had invested some of that money into an appreciating asset rather than to an asset. You see, a house you got to have. Yeah. Now, only way you're going to get a value from it, if it's paid off, is sell it. Yeah. Now, there's security in saying, well, I don't owe a mortgage. And if your mortgage is greater than your asset, then you're in debt. If you buy a $100,000 house and you go and borrow 110, yeah, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
But if you buy a house and put your 10 to 20% down and then pay it as scheduled, you're paying interest, but thankfully we get to deduct the interest.
And it's never a cut and dry.
Right.
You know, these are not just do these things. It's principles that we want you to learn and get a hold of, because you many times people say, well, I have $100,000 cash. Maybe somebody gave me, $100,000 inheritance. And so I have that and it's sitting in the bank. And I'm always thankful when people sit down and talk to me or you or anybody that's in the business that can really help them and not sell them a product. Because many times they'll say, well, I owe $100,000 on my house. Okay, what is your interest rate? Well, I owe $100,000 left on my house. My monthly payment's fine. I can handle that. We don't have any problem. We've got a 5% interest. Well, my recommendation in a scenario like that, if they've managed their debt and they've got all the things, there's several things we go through, is if you take that $100,000 and you invest that and you create something that's earning 6.5%, you're now making money over what the 5.5%. So you're still growing that and you're growing an asset. But more importantly than that, you're creating an asset that will build and bring you income. If you pay off the house, you don't have debt, but you're living in that house, you have no income. It's not an income producing asset. And the house will probably appreciate over time, but then you're going to have the depreciation of things and roof and things that have to be done. If you take that $100,000 and continue to grow that, again, that's the least it will ever be. So what we're trying to do is, we're not saying that scenario is ironclad every time. There's different things. But to start thinking about, as you do those things, that sometimes if I have $100,000 and it's in a safe investment and it's working, I don't really have debt on my house as we think of debt, because I could pay that off. It protects me. But if everything's working as it is and I'm still working and all of that, I'm now created an income producing asset that I can have for the rest of my life, my kids, grandkids, and on and such. That's kind of the difference that we sometimes want people to think, because we get in mindset, well, I can pay off my debt. We pay off all our debt, but where's your income producing asset? Someday you're not going to be able to work. Right. And you've got to have something in retirement. That's what the difference.